We start with the first sikha of this five halakim, Yud to Yudalid. We go back to Breishis. And on the first Rashi on the entire Torah, magnificent sikha. Amad Yitzchak. Famous thing about Shleima Sa'ada, it's like Herzach Lahaskell, but it never takes it in a different direction. Of course, that starts with the foundation that Rashi is here to explain Pshulish Mikdeh. However, we know that Rashi also includes in Yadim Floim amazing stuff, like the Shalah says, it includes even Lazim Daidaisa, the secrets of Torah. And Al Tadeva says that Pirishtash Yam Chumash, it said in Ayom Yom as well, is Yena Shal Torah. It's the wine of Torah. So how much more so in the first Rashi, which is the beginning. Rashi starts, Amad Ab Yitzchak, which according to some opinions is his father, that the Torah should have only started Machirish Zalachem, which is the first mitzvah in Parshas Boi. Why did it start with Breishis? Mishum Koyach Am Maisav Higid La'amei Losses Lam Nachas Goyim. It's a pasuk in Tilim that Hashem, the Koyach Maisav, the strength of his Maisim, he told his nation to give them the nachla, to give them the inheritance of the goyim. In other words, to give them Eretz Yisrael. Shem yem the umas ha'olam Yisrael listematem. If the goyim are going to tell the yidden you're thieves, shekvash t'matzah shiva goyim, that you conquer the land of 7 nations. Hey mo'evdim lahem. The Jewish people will respond, kol ha'arch l'kadosh baruch hu. The entire land is Hashem's. Hu b'da, he created. Nisan Allah sheyashav einov, gave it to whoever he felt was deserving. It was right in his eyes. B'tzayin nisan lahem. In his will, he gave it to them. In other words, he gave it to the 7 nations. And with his will, he took it from them. And the Solomon gave it to us. In other words, look at the Torah. The Torah that shows clearly that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised it to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that Am Yisrael is going to get it. So the straightforward Torah in Yena Shel Torah, in the Avodah, is that a person should not be impressed, and a person should not be worried, not take it to heart, anything that opposes Kiyum Torah mitzvahs. In other words, the nations of the world come to the Jewish people and say you shouldn't keep Torah because it's against common sense. And just like they tell them about Eretz Yisrael, that you shouldn't conquer it, Yidden shouldn't care. But that's a general, that's from the general. But let's go into the specifics of Rashi, specifically the beginning of Rashi. The Rebbe says that a foundational part of Rashi is our response to them, and the response comes from Pasuk Tilim, Koyach Maisav Higid La'amei Losses Lahem Nachlas Goyim, which is in Tilim Kafir Aleph. That's the foundation of us, our negation. That's of our retard, of our response. So first of all, what's the hidah from that pasuk? Also, what's mean Koyach Maisav Higid La'amei? He should have said Maisav Higid La'amei. The Eibishter told us the story of his actions. What koyach mice of the strength of his action? What's the lesson of it? And also, why higid? Usually it's Omar, Diber, Sipev, higid. So in order to understand that, we have to understand what Eretz Yisrael is in Luchnius. What's in Eretz Yisrael in Luchnius? We know that in Gashmius, it's Ein Hashem L'kecha Hashem looks at it the whole year. In other words, it has Hashgacha Pratis in a revealed way throughout the entire time, more than any other nation. So, in other words, in Eretz Yisrael, seherzich, you feel getlichkeit, alikus more. And because the Eibishter's eyes are there, so it's impossible for there to be any negation of Kedusha, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's pasha pure and cannot see bad, and that's a pasuk from Habakkuk. So, in other words, what's Eretz Yisrael in Duchnius when we serve Hashem? It's the ultimate level of Kiyum Torah mitzvahs. Bringing Elikus into this world, an absolute negation and disassociation from that. And that's what Eretz Yisrael, the Lashon Eretz. We know that. Why is it called Eretz? Chazal tell us in Medrash. Eretz, Sheliratzatzam, Lashon Ratzin, that we want to do the will of our Creator. And Yisrael is also, Yisrael Shishim Neba, it's the Torah. In other words, it refers to Torah, the completion of Torah, doing everything in Torah. But the way it was historically was that Eretz Yisrael was originally Shem, belonged to Shem, the son of Noach. Then it was conquered by the Canaan. And in order to return Eretz Canaan to Eretz Yisrael, we have to conquer it. So too in Luchnius, in order for us to accomplish Eretz Yisrael in this world, there has to be a kibush Eretz Yisrael, the conquering of Eretz Yisrael. Now, what does that mean? So simply, we said Eretz Yisrael is everything that's good and positive, but then there's the union of kibush, and that is to not only what we do in this world, that our davening and our learning, but a major theme throughout the sikhs, especially in the sikhs that we've been learning, these 5 halakim. Your whole world has to be taken over by ruchnius. In other words, not only when you daven, but everything you do 24 hours a day, even things that you do for your guf and for your own benefit. And it has to be on the highest level, that literally everything that's in Gashmius is totally given over to Likus. And the Gashmius itself is not felt anymore. Not only, but he says like this unbelievable level, Levi, not only because there's so much Kedusha, but because the Gashmius itself is Kedusha. Not because the Gashmius is still there, but you overwhelmed and you flooded it with Kedusha. But no, the Gashmius itself became Kedusha. And what does the kibush mean? What does it mean conquering? See, he says more than that, that sometimes you steal time, even when there's, technically this time should be dedicated to your own stuff, you steal it, like what you're doing now, Project Kedusha, you're stealing time from Elam Hazeh for Torah learning. And that's the kibush of Eretz Yisrael. You push conquer Eretz, the artsius of the Welt, the physicality of Welt, and you make it into Eretz Yisrael. So according to this, it gets a whole different level of geschmackheit. It says it becomes sweeter. The response of the Avtzon Nusiyenu, specifically the Tzemach Tzedek, who said, Mach da Eretz Yisrael, make your Eretz Yisrael. That means not only make Eretz Yisrael beruchnius, do Torah mitzvahs, but he said more, Mach da Eretz Yisrael, do the kibush of Eretz Yisrael. That's what mach is, the making. Make Eretz Yisrael, conquer Eretz Yisrael. Take the world. It's sukkahs, I can't drink out of sukkah. Conquer Eretz Yisrael in every area of your life that you have. Now it goes, the famous story of the Meraglim. It says, on the way to the Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people had the issue of the Meraglim. And Pasha goes and takes it in a different way that I haven't seen it, previously. Usually you learn it in Shlach Sif, it's this a Breishis Sif. Chazal tell us that when the Meraglim said, Ki chazaku mimenu, that they are stronger mimenu, Mimenus kiviyachal afilu balabayis, even the kiviyachal, even the Eibishter, Eine yachal lotzi kelim misham cannot take his kelim out. In other words, the Eibishter cannot conquer. It says that how is that possible that they would say something like that? We were told that when Moshe Rabbeinu sent them, that's what Rashi says. After that, you push not only kasha, but not only do you go a bit off the rails, but you say the Eibishter can't conquer. What does that even mean? And they're referring to Eibishter as the Balabais. Understand? You're saying he's the Balabais, but he can't take the things out. So according to at least in Avodah Ruchnis, we can explain like this. And the Rebbe does this beautiful, Pasha brings tons of sources. He says they have a strong time. How could you conquer Eretz Yisrael? The Gashmistic of things. Gashmis is a real thing. The Eibishter created Gashmis. The Eibishter even says, watch over your bodies. And the Rambam says that that keeping your body healthy is Avodas Hashem. So Gashmis takes space. And the Baal Shem Tov says, not only is it Chassidus, it says, when you see the donkey of your enemy, and we refer to Chaymer, your own chumnius, Azav Tazmir, you have to help your body. And then there's the Tzemach Tzedek, the Mesitcha Maggid, who says, Asiveta Kleina Lechel and Gufan, there's a small hole in the body. In other words, when it's not complete health, and Chazal say, Ein Semchim Ala Nes. In other words, you have to work within nature. So basically, they have a strong taina, these guys. They were Balak-Siddas. Gashmis is Caleb Shlakadosh Baruch Hu, and the Eibishter made them Gashmis. So how could a Nefesh Elikis conquer them and take away the Metzius of their physicality? The physicality is ingrained. And more so, because the Eibishter created nature in a way that they exist in their own reality. So in other words, the Eibishter created that way. So the Eibishter wants it to be that way. So how could you conquer it? They're not caring for that. They were created with a different modus operandi. They were created with a different way of a mechanism of working. They work in Helen Bahester. So the Eibishter Taka could do everything, but he was Magbil himself. He limited himself that even him, the Balabais, cannot take his Kalim out. Like he says that he brings the Eibishter promised he'll never change nature. So the Eibishter technically cannot change nature. So Meraglim have a thing. Yidden should stay in the midbar and work with Torah mitzvahs, but not with Gashmias Devel. And it says the Rebbe in their taina to stay in the midbar, you could see their intention as well. Why? Because the midbar is a place where nobody lives. You can't plant, you can't drink, there's no water. Ruchnius means it's a time when a person doesn't have any Gashmias thing. And that's the tainus of Meraglim. They want to stay in the midbar. They want to stay and do Torah mitzvahs when I don't have to deal with the world. In other words, when I'm in the midbar, when I don't have to deal with physicality. But in Eretz Ha'amim, the land of the nations, when I have to deal with the world, even though the taka the kelim of Hashem, but I can't conquer them under Kedusha. Says the Rebbe, but the truth is they made a huge mistake. Ta'us gedoyla ta'ubaza, an incredible mistake was made over here. Because the tachlis hakavana, the ultimate intention, the way the intention of creation plays out in this world is dafka, elevates Gashmias. And whatever, whatever mechanism Gashmias have is only there so that we can go into the Tachtonim, which is Tachtoin, that's what Eibishter makes it such a low thing, and turn it over to Levi Spark, that everything of the Welt becomes Shvila Torah Shnikladeshes, Shvila Yisrael Shnikladeshes. So of course they're Kalim for Kedusha. And not only are you able to conquer, you have to conquer it. Lichbosh. Because that's how you do the Tzainish of the Eibishter. Lasois Didalo Yisparach B'Tachtainim. Dafka here. More even than what you do with Kedusha. You do more with the B'Tachtainim here. Comes to them and says, so from this time of the Meraglim back to our Rashi, is Nishtalshel, from that thought process, evolves eventually the timeless of Umas Ha'olam in our Rashi. The person's learning and davening and doing mitzvahs, he's not busy with settling this world. So the nations of the world to say, you know what, feel the elikus. But when you're dealing with Olam, Yeshuvah Shalom, you're going into this world, there's no room for Avodas Hashem. This time, the Umas Ha'olam come and say, don't kivash them, don't conquer this place. This is the place for Goyim. This is the place for Velt. This is Gashmias. Keep your Kedusha out of it. They have a nature, they have a system. The Teva is Teva. And on the contrary, they say, it has even a precedence. Working with Gashmias and living in Gashmias has a precedence. Why? Because the beginning of Torah talks about Velt. And Chayris Alachem only comes much later. But their whole taina is to'us v'sheker. Over here, the taina, the Meraglim is to'us. Over here, it's a sheker. That takes precedence. The tachlis al-kavanah of everything is to make a deal le'isfarach b'tachtain. So now we can understand the lashon koyach ma'isa. In order to negate the taina of Umas Ha'olam, you have to not only focus on the fact of ma'isa v'kadosh baruch hu, what he did, but the intention of what he did, the purpose, the goal, the mission statement. And that's what koyach means. Koyach is the intention of what the Eibishter wanted. And higid, what does it mean? Higid comes from the lashon of mamshich. That's why the word agoda, or like hagoda. So it says regarding agoda, it's moishchin li b'shaladim. That's what the Gemara says in Shabbos. It pulls the person. So higid, in other words, the Eibishter gave us. He gave us within us. He downloaded within us the koyach, the intention of this all, so that we could turn it all over to Kedusha. So now we understand also the whole adichus in Rashi's question. He starts off the Torah should have only started Chayris Alachem. Why did it start Breishis? Says Rashi, that says the Rebbe L'churi could have started and said the Torah started Breishis and not Chayris Alachem because. But Rashi wants to be madya something. That be'etzem lo yitzadich telahaschil. In other words, that's the taina of the Welt, but we have to negate that. We have to negate that nekuda, that taina of Umas Ha'olam. Because Torah is tachlis, starts to take away, and the whole intention is to take the ma'asav and reveal the koyach. So therefore, koyach ma'asav, to bring Alikus. In other words, what Rashi's coming and saying is, Take, the Torah should have only started Chodesh Elachem, which is Mitzvah L'Shona, but Dafke. Why does he start with Breishis? Because that is what the ultimate level is, not necessarily to work with Torah mitzvahs, but more so to work with Welt and transform it.